Hey guys, I'm Jordy, and this is your guide to the first of 12 guides that you'll need to tackle the various ghouls and baddies in the Icecrown Citadel, the frigid bone construct, Lord Marrowgar.
This is the beginning and the end, mortals.
Okay, so Lord Marrowgar is a two-phase fight. One where you'll be fighting him like any normal mob, and another where he does his signature move, Bone Storm.
Bone Storm!
As far as raid composition goes, you're going to want to bring 2 tanks, 4 to 5 healers, and a mix of ranged and melee DPS. As this is the first guide for all of ICC, I'd recommend you bring 5 healers and 2 tanks for this entire place. You'll flex up and down for a few fights, but that should be your core, and your hybrids can handle the rest. This is a solid example of a raid comp that can handle anything in this place with some flexibility. Okay, so let's get into Lord Marrowgar's abilities. First, he's got a cleave called Bone Slice that does a large amount of damage in an arc in front of him. This damage is split between any 3 targets it hits, so your 2 tanks will need to soak this together in order to prevent getting one shot. No big deal, just make sure both tanks are in front of the boss at all times. Second, he'll periodically cast Bone Spike Graveyard on 3 random raid members in the room. A spike will jut out of the ground and impale your friends, each doing 10% of the player's HP per second until they're killed. These must be removed ASAP, as letting them stack up could be deadly for various reasons, so prio these when you see them and get them down. Finally, in Phase 1, he'll cast Cold Flame in straight lines around the room. These do frost damage, so make sure that you've got a frost aura up and should be easily sidestepped. Now, one thing we learned is that if you have between 6 and 8 people standing at range from the boss, and the rest of the raid in melee range under the boss, you can avoid this fire from ever hitting the melee and anyone else standing there. The fire will harmlessly spawn behind them and continue toward the people standing out. So at range, we use our healers and a hunter or 2, and anyone else who might volunteer, while the melee and the rest of the casters stand under the boss and pump without needing to move at all. This helps a lot with DPS and minimizes the effect of this mechanic. Okay, so that's Phase 1. Now on to what everybody remembers, Bone Storm. 45 seconds into the fight, Lord Marrowgar gets bored and starts to spin like a Beyblade, slicing up everyone in the room. The closer you are to him as he spins, the more damage he'll deal, but everyone gets hit, so everyone will need heals. He actually will tend to target the player furthest away from him on this, so if you stay loosely spread in the center of the room while 2 hunters or a hunter in the tanks run to opposite sides of the room, he should ping-pong back and forth between them, and this will help minimize damage on the raid as a whole. There's also some evidence of a bleed being applied here. We didn't see it in our polls, but it's possible this gets added in later, so keep heals strong and don't stand in those fires. The fire is almost assuredly what will kill you in this phase, not the Bone Storm itself. Okay, so once Bone Storm ends, he just returns to his normal Phase 1 self, and the fight repeats until you've taken him out. Alright, let's get into the quick walkthrough. First, on pull, we run in and lust. The 6 to 8 people we assign to stand out, spread out, hunters in each corner with the healers toward the center. Keep in mind, if any of these players get bone spiked, the ranged must turn and kill the spike, or those players will absolutely tick out, especially if a cold flame creeps its way toward them while they're impaled. Melee and any assigned casters will stack under the boss and not move an inch. They should be safe from the fires there. From here, we continue on until Bone Storm. The raid loosely spreads and we begin a desac rotation to help minimize the damage. People use self-saves here, health stones, anything to keep themselves up, while healers pump as best they can. Divine Hymns, Wings, whatever, this is the major raid damage phase of the fight and you should load cooldowns into it. Now ideally he's bouncing around the room and spending very little time in the center, but once he's done, he should be taunted by your main tank and repositioned squarely where you started and the fight resets. Healers spread out, hunters in the corners, melee and casters underneath, and the 2 tanks soaking in front of him. Repeat this a few times, and down he'll go. Congrats on your first kill, and a major step towards climbing the Citadel. Okay, let's talk about some tank tips. Marrowgar hits pretty hard, especially with that Bone Slice cleave, so be sure to wear some beef. He's tauntable too, so don't worry all that much about threat. Do your best to position him in the center of the room as shown. This will help your ranged align around him for a good phase 2 positioning. Also, don't move him once you're happy with where he's at. This could be disastrous for your melee DPS who are positioned carefully so as to avoid getting Cold Flame dropped on top of them. And for some healer tips, like I said earlier, phase 2 is where you want to dump all of your cooldowns. So create a rotation with your other healers and always have something going up through this phase. It will go a long way to cutting raid damage. And in phase 1, keep an eye on those cold flames. Spread out so that if one comes your way, you aren't all moving at the same time. This could lead to a tank death. And if one of you gets impaled, call it out so the ranged helps free you and your other healers know that you're out of the fight for a bit and should cover your assignment. And for DPS, do your best to stack under the boss in phase 1 as close as possible. This will prevent the cold flame from dropping on your head. If you're having real trouble with the strategy, just spread out. It won't overly complicate the fight much and will be a bit easier. And hunters, a well-timed deterrence is nice when Marrowgar is coming at you. Just be sure to stick to your position as you're an important point that he's going to head toward in phase 2 that needs to be maintained. And really that's it for Lord Marrowgar. Once he goes down, the icy walls flanking him will crumble and you'll get access to Lady Deathwhisper's church and come to really hate purple ghosts, I promise you. Now these boss guides take a lot of work to make, so if you enjoyed it or are looking forward to some of the upcoming ones, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for me. It really does help a ton and I super appreciate it. In addition to boss guides for all of ICC coming soon, I'll have an assignment sheet that you can use for your raids so everyone has an idea of what their job is, a Weakora guy with the legendary Foji who will help you with alerts and calls, and of course, the super requested Phase 4 Loot Prio guide, which you can get a full week early if you subscribe to mine or Pummel's Patreon. I linked both of them below. Okay, that's it for me. Stay tuned for Lady Deathwhisper in the coming days, and I will see you in the next one.